Hello friends, Alex Blandin here from Team Outer World, and today I'm going to be talking about my Control Valentina list. Now I've seen a lot of people talking about what is top tier, and recently Ryan Miles posted a video stating that he felt that Gwibber was the best deck in the meta, with Mikage falling short behind. I have a little bit of a disagreement on that. I feel Mikage is the better deck, but with certain sideboards like the Hook Alice's Castling combo, like he showed on stream last Wednesday, you can swing the Gwibber matchup in your favor. Now, I haven't done enough testing to be completely sold on that Gwibber sideboard and saying it's better than Control. But for those of you who are looking to play Control, this is my Val 2 Control deck. The reason I chose Val 2 over Mikage is, despite having a slightly weaker Gwibber matchup, it has what I feel is the strongest matchup for control decks, which is what I feel most of the top tier players are going to be playing, and also a lot of good players as well. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. I'm not going to be using the clue system like Ryan used. I'm going to be discussing more of its general matchups as opposed to the deck as a whole. So, the main idea behind this deck was the Mikage mirror match, if you've ever played it, is absolutely awful. It's like you both sit there, you cast a creature when you have a bunch of mana, and you try to just shoot it a bunch of times with the remaining mana you have, accumulate counters, and then you hope you can flip your Mikage and they can't kill it and just swing for one in one big go and kill them. So, like, it's kind of just like sitting there, and whoever gets the pieces to be able to flip their Mikage, protect it, and swing in for one kill in one turn for a kill wins most of the time, unless you can like set both your Rizas or all three Rizas or whatever, flip them all at the same time, and then just amass a huge board that they can't deal with at once. But that's a little less likely. Okay, so to start, one of the main reasons I think this deck is better in the control matchup is the ability to search Regalia. And the reason for that is there's a little trick that you can do with the deck that basically seals the game, and I'm not even kidding you, most of the time it actually results in deck out more than you actually winning the game. But we'll get into that a little bit later, I guess. For right now, I'll just discuss the basis of the deck. So it's kind of standard for a Valentina control list. You have your Scorns for Gwibber Turbo. Now, Gwibber Turbo is a little bit harder than it is with Mikage, so you have to main board a little bit more hate for it. I'm actually maining Flame Traps and the Redstones, as you can see, just because I think Flame Trap's one of the strongest cards against Gwibber this meta, and I think the matchup isn't quite in your favor when they hit the Nuts hands if you don't have Flame Trap or some amount of Flame Traps. Ah, jeez, why does that keep happening? So, one of the other main cards in the deck, of course, is Bear Magic, and with this deck you can actually search bows. So when you get past like turn 2, turn 3, and you have a Bear Magic in your hand, you're able to search your bows, which is huge against Gwibber because you need the bow and the Bear Magic to basically counteract their Gwibbers. So if they don't get going to quite the start they want, or you're able to scorn and maybe stall them out from casting their Gwibbers before turn 2, turn 3, you're really able to get going by just searching the bows and whatnot, and just pinging them off with the bows and Bear Magic. And then we have other standard stuff. I have the Sacred Beast package in here. This deck can struggle a little bit with the aggro decks. Sometimes they just get going fast enough and they can burn you out. Burn spells are like the scariest thing for this deck. Despite having 3 Nameless Mist and 3 Seals, sometimes they don't always do the trick. Sometimes they just rip the Thunder, the Blood Boil, or whatever. And if they've already sealed out like 2,000, 2,500 damage, sometimes they just keep picking away at you with the burn spells or the Pricia dying or whatever. Or even Flame Sprites can be annoying. They're just tricky little things. You don't really want to kill them most of the time because they're 1 drop, 2 3s, and they're only getting in for 2 damage. But after a while, they start to become a problem. So you got Heavenly Gust. A lot of issues that the deck can face is if your opponent's playing a ruler-intensive control strategy as well, a lot of times they'll have a lot of Regalia. They'll have Wind-secluded to try to protect it. They'll have their Deathcythe to try to slow you down. Barrier, which a lot of times, if you're playing against a control deck, you don't really worry about things like these, like Shackles, Barrier, Deathcythe. You're just going to play a slow game, so the Heavenly Gust isn't really going to come into play till later in the matchup. Whereas when you're playing a deck like Gwibber or Aggro, when they hit you with like a turn 1 Barrier or a turn 1 Shackles, that hurts you a lot more because you need to be able to activate your ability to search the bows versus the aggro decks, or you might need to flip early. A lot of times what I end up doing against the aggro decks is flipping on turn 3 if I can get 2 Laves, or flipping on turn 4 with the Deathcythe and just swinging at their guys and stealing them, and either using them as blockers or using them to swing at their remaining guys and take them out. The other thing that helps versus the aggro matchups is the Sacred Beasts, which, because of the life gain and the ability to remove 2 guys, if you hit the stones correctly and you have to flip early, so say your first 3 stones do happen to be the green stones, which it's not super likely, but it's not super unlikely either. I don't know the actual mathematical odds because I'm just lazy. But in the case that you do hit the 3 green stones and you just have to flip immediately, the next turn, so long as you have Lave, you can cast the Sacred Beast God Art, or the Pricia God Art, and just kill 2 of their guys, gain 800 life, draw a card, and you just OTK them on that turn essentially by sacking them all off with Lave and swinging with Val for massive amounts of damage. So one of the biggest strengths against the control decks is most of the time you're not going to play a game of trying to get creatures out. You're going to win in one of either 2 ways, one of which I mentioned before is deck out. The other way is swinging with Val for 4,000 damage. I'll talk about that one first. So to swing with Val for 4,000 damage, you do need to have the Sacred Beast God Art live. What you'll do is you'll need to have a Nameless Mist in your hand generally to hand check to make sure they don't have Black Moonbeam or some way to kill your Val. You'll need 10 mana, all 10 of them. You can do it with 8 mana, but I recommend it with 10 just to be safer. I mean, it really depends what's in their hand or how rushed you are for time. So with 10 mana, what you're going to do, you need, let me see, I didn't actually count this out beforehand. 4, that's 22, plus 4 is 26. So how many regalias is that? 2 plus 5, 7. So you need a total of 4 regalia in play beforehand at the start of your turn. You tap all 4, that's plus 8. And then you tap them again, that's plus 16. That puts Val at 3,000. And then what you're able to do is you summon all the Sacred Beasts, so it's 3 mana to flip, that's 3 right there. 3 mana for the Sacred Beast God Art, because you're going to double tap Laevateinn. You're able to swing with the 4/4 for 400 damage. If they have a blocker, you use your remaining 2 mana to either Val God Art it or Melgus God Art, doesn't matter, whichever one, just to make sure the 400 damage goes through. You swing with Val, you sack off the rest of the guys, that's 3,200 damage with the 4 regalia, which hopefully will be your 2 Laevateinn and your 2 Deathcythe, as long as you're searching them out the whole game. And then you have the 1 extra mana for the Nameless Mist, that's 10 mana total, 3, 3, 2, 1. Oh wait, that's 9 mana. Is that 9 mana? 3, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, 9 mana. Okay, there you go. So you only actually need 9 mana to do it. The other win condition I mentioned is deck out, and how deck out happens. So this deck kind of has this interesting, not infinite loop, but kind of. I guess it's not really an infinite loop, but whatever you want to call it. Oh, goddamn. So what you do actually is when you're at like 5 or 6 plus mana, every single turn, what you do is you play Hydromonica, you play Horn, you search them out, you play them, you search your deck with Hydromonica, and then you draw the card for turn, and then you shuffle your grave back in with the Horn, and you search them both back out again. So basically every single turn, what you do from turn 6 onwards, provided you have the mana, is you just keep searching your deck for whatever card you want. And generally, at first you usually get seals, so you're prepared to do whatever you need to, or if you're going to go off that turn, you think you're just going to swing for the 1 turn kill with Valentina, you get the Nameless Mist. Generally what you do is you get seals, and you don't use these seals for anything except if your opponent you think is really going to kill you, like something that really, really needs to be answered, or to stop their Horn of the Sacred Beast. And why I say that is because as long as you're able to keep shuffling your deck in, like they don't counter your Horn of the Sacred Beast, you're going to win based on deck out. And a lot of control decks now main 1 to 2 horns, and they side another. And one of the big things people don't realize in the control mirror is that there's so much removal now that most of the time people are able to just get rid of all your ways of producing damage, and you just go to deck out. And so I see a lot of people not valuing the horn as a real card. A lot of people will just not hold up their seals for it. They'll just let it resolve when they have the chance to just negate it. It's really one of the strongest cards in the control matchup, considering how much removal is in the format. And I think that's a big thing you need to watch when you're possibly going to time, or you're trying to win a game where you think your opponent just has too much removal, is just count cards in deck. Make sure your deck isn't less than theirs, that you're going to deck out sooner, and make sure to prioritize resolving your horns. So another thing I'm going to talk about now is a little bit about the Gwibber matchup with the hooks. And so I played Ryan Miles on stream, for those of you who saw last Wednesday, and he just totally fucking creamed me. I think I lost 4 games in a row with this, didn't win a single game, even after sideboard. I haven't tested that too much yet, so I don't know if it was just because he got lucky or I just drew poorly. He did miss Regalia like 3 or 4 games in a row and still never bricked on a Ruler's Memoria, so I really don't know if that's the case. The deck just could be the nuts, and I could be wrong. But I have to still test further to find out if there's a way to actually beat that deck with this deck. If I don't think there is, I honestly might not even consider playing this deck. Moving on, though, to the sideboard. Well, there's the stone lineup. You got 3 reds total for the Flame Trap. Some people might feel that's a little low. You just really can't fit any other red stones. It's kind of just like a hope you get it type deal. Your odds are still pretty good. You start at what? It's like 3 and 10, which really isn't bad, and it gets better every turn. So unless they're really pressuring you with the Gwibbers, you should be able to hit it by the time you have Flame Trap. Okay, now for the sideboard. We got all 7 kings in there. The sideboard space isn't super relevant where I want to lose the +1/+1. Well, I'll admit you probably never use the Machina or the Rezzard's God Art. You definitely never use the Machina God Art, and I've never used the Rezzard's God Art. You only have 4 creatures in your deck, so and they all have to die. So it's very unlikely that you use Rezzard's God Art. But the pump is super relevant because it allows you to more easily keep your Valentina alive, and it enables OTKing them a little bit easier. Also, Rezzard's name is essential for the Deathcythe. Machina, I guess, doesn't really matter because you don't play Maribel and you never use its God Art. Rezzard matters for the Deathcythe stealing stuff in case you're playing like the aggro matchup or something along those lines. So, moving on, the sideboard. So we have 2 Rizas, 2 Melders, and what this is for is to side out the Sacred Beast. If you're playing a Gwibber deck, you're more than likely going to side out the Sacred Beast because you're probably never going to cast that God Art versus them. While the life gain seems like it would help, most of the time you can't do anything with them. None of the Sacred Beasts can target Gwibber or Titania or Drake or whatever, so it's really not worth playing them for board control. The best thing you're going to do is kill an Atom Brawly and bounce something that's useless and doesn't matter. So generally we take out the Sacred Beasts for the stealth guys. If you're playing a control matchup and it's a real slow game, you're better off going into the stealth guys as well, because the Sacred Beasts you don't need to gain life. There's usually nothing to target with their effects, so they have to target themselves anyways most of the time. And with Riza, you can kind of just leave her there and let her sit. And when you get 2 of them, you can flip and try to swing with all of them and kill them really quickly. Versus the aggro matchups, you do stay in with the Sacred Beast because you do need to gain the life, and you do need powerful tempo against your opponent. Then we have Mikage. Now, the reason Mikage is in here is because when you play against the Gwibber deck, Valentina has, like I said, this is tuned to have a good matchup versus Gwibber. But with Mikage, your Gwibber matchup is even better. So what you do a lot of the times is when you play these Gwibber decks is you just side in Mikage, and he allows you to disrupt your tokens, and it gives you, I wouldn't say I wouldn't say a more reliable win condition, but a slightly faster win condition. So he's definitely a sideboard in for the Gwibber decks. I would probably just side him against every single Gwibber deck. The only downside to siding Mikage into Gwibber is you can't search the bows, but you're able to slow them down a little bit more, unless you play like a Gwibber deck that's really slow to begin with. Like, you play them and it doesn't seem like there's any way they're putting down like a bunch of Gwibbers before turn 2 or 3, which I don't think you'll play any Gwibber deck like that. Then you might stay in Val just because she can search the bows, but other than that, you're going to be going into Mikage most of the time. Then there's Flame Trap. You're just always siding this in against Gwibber decks, or if you play some other weird deck that goes wide, this just comes in every single time. We got Heavenly Gust. Heavenly Gust also comes in against Gwibber decks a lot of the time. So sometimes what they'll do is a lot of the Gwibber decks will bring in Shackles, and they'll bring in Barrier. And what those do is sometimes they give up their early game tempo to try to slow you down, which if you don't have the answer can actually hurt you a lot, because they just, even in the mid game, if you can't reliably use bow and bear magic or use your mana efficiently because you're paying extra for the bows or you can't search them, you can have a big problem there. So this will come in against anything that you think is going to side Shackles and Barrier and abuse mid game tempo to kind of put the hurt on you. And last but not least, this is actually tech I stole from someone at one of the locals in New York. He's a friend of mine, Adrian. Alright, so what this stone does, for those of you who are not familiar, is you can rest it, a black, and 1 anything, so 3 mana total, and you can remove a card from their grave. Now, why this is important is, when I was talking before about the deck out method, when people go, if they do resolve a horn, and you can't stop them, what happens is when the horn hits the grave, it banishes as a cost, and you have the opportunity right then and there to remove it. Now, if you remove it, the horn doesn't shuffle back in, so even though they shuffled their deck back, there's no horn again. So you can just continue playing the game, and while you're shuffling your deck back in, they only get that one shuffle in, so they're still going to deck out before you are. Anything I missed? No, I'll be posting the list in the comments section. If you have any questions, feel free to inbox me or post in the comments. As always, like, comment, subscribe, etc. Thanks for watching.